Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's wonderful to see so many Cambridge film people in the room. I didn't realize there was such a big community. We need to get together more often. That's what people are saying. My name is Colin Ramsey. I'm a filmmaker and a founder of Dragonlight Films. Also make documentaries as well. And I'll be your host this evening. A little bit of housekeeping. So the fire exits are there, and there. There's no test scheduled tonight. So if you do hear a fire alarm, it's the real thing. There isn't a bar at the back of the room, unfortunately, but we will get a glass of wine after the session. And thank you to RTS East for helping us put this event on, and to Gwyn. Is Gwyn anywhere? Thank you for all the organising and stuff as well. So really excited about tonight. I think there's lots of conversations happening about AI, but not many forums to practice it. And I think Cambridge as well is very special because you've got some of the most advanced AI technology, thinking, and labs happening right now in the city. But as like a community of filmmakers, those two worlds don't really meet much. And we think of film as something that's very human emotions, human values, lived experience, real world values, and storytelling. And I think the debate is still on whether AI and machines can actually replicate that. So we're living this debate right now, which is fascinating. My journey into this came in 2016, actually from a letter that Stephen Hawking wrote a year before he died, calling for a ban on autonomous lethal weapons, which is another subject altogether. And that prompted a series that I created with a few colleagues called Rise of the Thinking Machines. I got to interview lots of AI thinkers in this space. So it was a fascinating project to work on. And also I'm a child of the 80s, so I grew up with a big diet of sci-fi about AI takeovers and sentient robots. So I'm very anxious about the future, but also really hopeful. And I hope as communities come together and governance steps up and the public say what we want, hopefully we can put some guardrails on AI and actually have as a utopia, not a dystopia, which is often what sci-fi gives us. But all those questions of existential risk, we're going to park tonight. So we're not talking about whether AI is good or bad. We're actually talking about the tools. So reimagining production with AI is all about how we as creatives and filmmakers can use these tools in really positive ways, how we can take control, use them to either enhance production or take away some of the drudgery of some of the film work. I'm sure many of you have experienced these tools already. So we're going to be talking to our amazing panel today, who will be giving you little splashes of kind of their specialisms, and we'll take some questions and answers at the end. And there's a drink at the end as well, followed by some networking. So that's it, folks. Let's give a warm round of applause to Raffaella, our first speaker. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, here I am. So I am an AI scientist, also a writer. It's an honor to open this session. It's also a tough job because I will have to tell you something about this tool in a few minutes. So let's go straight to the point. We have just a few minutes. So what happens when creativity meets this generative artificial intelligence tool? Well, who leads whom? Because that is the question. All I will say is about one question, and the answer is only one. The AI can help creativity, but only if humans keep agency. That has to be very clear. But I would like to talk to you about these tools starting from two misconceptions, because we have to understand these tools and what they are. First of all, statistical parrot. Someone defined that way. Well, they are not parrot because actually they don't regurgitate parts of works stored and retrieved by a database. But they are statistical. Yes, that's correct. Because what they do is combining, is looking for generating output, looking for these outputs in a huge learning space. And we'll see how it works. Derivative is another label. But they're not derivative because there is not in these tools any part of specific identifiable source. The responsibility is still human. It's people making them, replicating things that already exist. So the accountability is still human. So I can explain how GLLM work in three ideas. First, data are turned into tokens and then into numbers. We'll see how. The goal is to predict, guess the next piece again and again at, stage. And there is no database of ready-made pieces, but only parameters and possible combinations. So, sorry, two tools. So, this slide is just to show you very, very quickly the similarity between a biological and an artificial neurons. Why? Because artificial neurons are the component of artificial neural networks that are behind these tools. They are the component, the basic components. So they work similarly. They have similar function. They both learn, the biological and the artificial neurons, learning from samples. And doing that, they acquire experience. But what does it mean? When we learn things in our life, we read books, we we admire art, we listen to music, we acquire preferences. And then we use those preferences, what we learned, to get inspired. When we create something, we just get inspired by what we learned. Now, these tools work in a similar way. First of all, they break information into very little pieces called tokens. These tokens are then turned, as I said, in numbers. So imagine these numbers, these very little numbers, all put in a long vector. A vector is a huge list of these numbers. Each number is keeping a token, a peculiarity, a characteristic of the information. And so we have all these numbers, imagine millions of numbers, representing what? Representing the distance of a concept from another. So that concepts and tokens having a similar behavior all end up in the same region of a large space. And all these spaces are so close that can be confused. So if, for example, I ask to one of these tools to tell me something about dogs, what these artificial brain do, they go in that space and they try to guess the next piece to output, starting from the prompt of the users, based on that similarity, on those numbers. What is the next close one? This is what they do. This is why they are statistical and not parroting. But let's have an example with a text. How this tool digest a writer's text. And this is the same for images and for music. What they do, they split the text into words and subwords, but not only that, so these tokens, but not only that. They also capture lexicon, tone, syntax, and emotions, or the style. That is typical vocabulary, sentence rhythm, narrative patterns, so they learn patterns. All of this is turned into numbers. So practically, the output is not a copied chapter, but it is more a region in the landscape. Okay? So, for example, if I ask to this tool, complete the sentence to be or not to be, of course it will give me that is the question. Also, humans would do that. Why? Because that pattern is very well known. So it is regurgitating. But why? Because I asked to complete that sentence. But if I ask to this tool, please create something, a sentence, in Shakespeare style, then the thing is different, because what it will do is exactly what we would do. We would go in that region of our memory trying to mimic Old English, Shakespeare style, Shakespeare rhythm, and that is what statistically this tool do. So the creator is the human writing the prompt, not the tool. Okay, so we can say that it's more generalization and not memorization. This is why I told you that parrot is not the right word to use. Now, the uncomfortable historical fact at the end is that when a new technology enter the creative process, there will be always someone saying, oh, that's not real art, okay? Because it is what happened. It happened with cinema compared to theater. It happened with photography compared to paintings. It always happens like that. So AI is just the latest case, the latest trigger. So instead of the question, does the machine create, we already said that it's not like that humans create, I think I propose another question. Where is the human creative gesture today? Because the creativity is made of two parts, the realization and the concept. And current law copyright law just protect the final product, the realization, and not the concept, while the concept is something that a machine could never do. So the concept is really human. So I think that we need a new balance that rewards the concept. I'm there. So there are also real opportunities with AI. For example, we have already said that AI doesn't replace talent, but it could remove entry barriers, things to new entries in a market. They don't have money, they can't face high upfront costs or prototyping or fight against gatekeepers control distribution. But they can do it with AI. AI can help in that. But also for people who are already in the creative market, AI, if they are in control, can help to accelerate draft, having more free cognitive time for truly creative decision, and also explore new formats and new hybrid experience. So to conclude, we need to know in order to master. So we need to be, as creative, we need to be in the rooms where decisions are made. To do that, we need to know. Because if we understand how these tools work, we can also negotiate better. So we need moments like this, moment where we understand how it works, and moment where we try to design a future, a strategy for the future. So takeaway, and I'm finished. 3 things. Agency. AI is a tool. Agency is human. So the creative people are still humans. Dignity, because these tools can be used to give new creative people, new entrants, new possibilities. So they can help new authors to access the market, balancing this power asymmetry that we are seeing nowadays. And then knowledge. Knowledge for me is the most important part. We need to know them. We need to know this tool to dominate them and to use them properly. And thank you. I finished. I think I went a bit forward, but it's fine. If I can say something, I want just to cite, because it came in my mind when we were talking earlier, but a sentence from Sun Tzu. Many of you know Sun Tzu, no? The Art of War. This is a war, this is a war for humanity. And now he used to say, if you know yourself, just yourself, you won't win a battle. If you know your enemy, you have 50% of possibility to win a battle. But if you know yourself and the enemy, you can make it. Thank you.
Okay, hi. Well, thanks, Raf. You really laid the foundations very much from the kind of approach that I've been looking at with AI in screenwriting. Down, forward, right? Yeah. There we go. We have 2 tools. I'm going to click the mic and speak into this. All right, so I am a senior lecturer and creative writing researcher at Anglia Ruskin University. I am a short film maker and screenwriter as well. And so my interest in AI is very much looking at it from a creative practice angle. My context is creative practice research. So, but my impetus, my motivation really for getting involved with AI at all was in response to, in the summer of 2023, as you might remember, there were a lot of strikes going on in America, particularly in Hollywood, around the Writers and Actors Union. Frightened, kind of justifiably so, perhaps, around the impact of AI technologies coming in, potentially taking people's jobs, taking people's images, reusing work without consent, without remuneration. Those are all massive issues, copyright and consent, that are ongoing. But I felt that was perhaps going to be hopefully dealt with by people on a slightly higher pay grade as me. I thought I would focus on the bit that I knew I could probably engage with on a practical level and perhaps contribute something of moderate value to the debate around, was can AI write a decent screenplay? So the first step for me is to, kind of abolish science fiction ideas. We've been living with, 50 years or more of science fiction notions of AI. I wasn't really interested in that. I was interested very much in the approach that Raffaella is talking about, of thinking of AI as, one more in a long line of technologies that we have all come to grips with, we've wrestled with, we've fought with, we've gone no, and then eventually sort of brought into the fold in some form or other, for better or for worse. The technology is out the box. We can't put it back in the box. So how can we, as creative individuals, find ways of navigating this technology in a way that serves our own ideas, our own visions, creative visions, and and supports the industry that we all want to live and thrive in. So I had a go at writing a short drama screenplay using Claude 3 Sonnet. This was in 2024. I got some funding from the British Academy to do this. ChatGPT, Google Colab Notebook, and some extracts from Cyrano de Bergerac, because I like the idea of Cyrano being a conduit of love. And I felt AI was a conduit of sorts, maybe not of love, but it could be if you give it the right prompt. So I kind of put all those into my melting pot, did a number of different cross-references. I followed and kind of came up with something that I've called, this is a sort of the title of the project that I got the funding for, and it has now become an article within the International Journal of Screenwriting. It's coming out hopefully in a couple of weeks. It was due to come out earlier in January. It's got a bit delayed. I'm interested from a very kind of realist perspective on those conversations with generative AI, how it can work as a co-writer. So not just giving over the whole process of writing up a screenplay to AI, but being a co-writer, thinking of it as a thought partner, as somebody to bounce ideas off when you're sitting alone in your room at 1 a.m. and nobody else wants to do that with you. And also perhaps as a screen character, who is this sort of, human-sounding thing that we've let into our networks? Post-digital intimacies is really, post-digital just means, that space between the digital world and us, the space that we so often find ourselves in, that's that moment where we're looking at screens. Our lives are mediated through screens. And I wanted to find a way of communicating that experience now with AI through the chatbot, through that process of conversation, prompting, and iterative text generation. And what came out of a very long and messy process was something I tidily refer to now as the Screenwriting with AI framework, which is published in detail in that paper that's coming out, which you can find on I'll post it around on my LinkedIn if you follow me on there. But essentially, it kind of goes into more detail around these kind of key points. I wanted to find a way of providing a traceable, ethical, and creative process for working with generative AI for story generation, and particularly for screen story generation. So I was using traditional story development tools and processes, like the key kind of stages that screenwriters will develop a story through, such as loglines, synopsis, outlines, treatments, script drafts, character profiles, and work through various different iterations and prompts to explore different versions. But the original prompt was from me. I'd give it thematic ideas, a particular scenario, character that I was interested in. I'd build that up and play with various different options. It was very much an iterative prompting process, using writer's experience, my experience in this case, but also applicable to anybody, your judgment, overarching narrative aims, the writer very much as the human in the loop, not solely giving it over to AI to come up with a story, which it can do, but not in a way that's quite flawed on a number of levels that I haven't really got time to go in here. If you want an example of a script, a feature film no less, that has been made entirely through automated prompts, entirely through AI. You could have a look at The Last Screenwriter. Has anybody seen that or heard of that? I know it had like one release. It nearly got a release at the Prince Charles in London, but then the Prince Charles membership said no to having an AI-authored screenplay feature debuted in their screens. So it's available in its entirety online. So if you look up The Last Screenwriter, the Swiss director came up with it. It's an interesting watch because although it kind of hits all the plot points, it kind of follows the trajectory of a perfectly serviceable narrative arc. It's understood the patterns, which is obviously what AI is great at. It's great at understanding the patterns of narrative. But it kind of misses the point on so many levels in terms of it being a drama and what it explores in terms of that human response to that moment. Characterization is often a problem for AI. So my approach is very much to focus on the human strengths, the writer's positionality, thinking about the lived and embodied experience that you bring to your prompt, your idea, sensory detail, intuition, cultural, visual, and other associations, memory, all the stuff that makes you you. So this is an extract from the film which I then made. The story follows Nia, a young student who has coming from a difficult relationship. She finds a boy that she falls in love with. She's not sure how to approach. She turns to AI chatbot for advice.
Hi Nia, that's a great question. I totally get what you mean. Trying to get someone you like to notice you can be nerve-wracking. A good way to get someone you like to notice you is to start a conversation about something you have in common. Can you find something you both like that you can connect on? That's great. Do you like them too? Why don't you tell them you like this band? You can also ask which is their favourite song. That would be a great way to start a conversation.
Okay, so that's that sort of post-digital digital intimate moment where you're spending time reflecting. The kind of thesis of the film, it's a research film looking at how we can use fiction filmmaking as a form of investigating kind of ideas and exploring different methodologies, is that while AI can be quite a useful sounding board, ultimately it was, she didn't follow the AI's advice, thankfully, and sort of did her own thing and made contact with the boy in a slightly different way. So it was obviously the sections that are written that are the AI voice in this context were prompted and were the text of the AI. But as you will have experienced, AI is rather verbose and it'll use 20 words when perhaps 3 would do. And so it needed some editing. It always needs quite a bit of editing. And it's always hard to sort of know when to stop. Even that scene goes on a little bit. I think now, watching it back a year later, the whole scene that was generated went on a lot longer. I did edit it down, but it does tend to, that kind of, the importance, what those processes taught me was the importance of that moment of human intervention, critique and judgment. So these are my takeaways for you, 3 W's. What's your why, what's your how, and what's your what? So what kind of writer are you? If you're thinking about working with AI, think about why. What kind of writer are you? What are you using it for? There's a really interesting report from the Minderoo Centre here in Cambridge, or Minderoo Centre of Technology and Democracy. They have a couple of interesting reports, one around the creative industries more broadly, but also one around the use of AI in novels. And it talks about, has various different case studies of novelists using AI in different ways, some just for editing tools and some for first drafts. So you need to think about whether you're that kind of writer. No one's asking you to, you don't have to use AI in any of your work, but it might increase your productivity, it might give you a new perspective, it might be a useful way of getting out of a black hole or a blank page, whatever metaphor you want to use. What kind of stories do you want to tell? I wanted to tell a story about somebody interacting with AI, so using AI seemed to make sense to do that for me. There was a synergy between, the subject matter, what the story was about, and the methodology, the process that I used to tell that story. What's your how? Obviously, you need to think about how you're going to approach this, what prompt method tool you're going to use, and maybe be fairly systematic about how you use that, and keep copious notes, because as you know, AI produces vast amounts of content that you won't necessarily want to use. How are you going to sift through all of that and make creative decisions about what to exclude and what to include? And then obviously importantly on the how is how you're going to attribute the credit or the labor. Whenever I've presented this film, it's mostly been within a research context, so I've sort of talked about the process of making this film, so everybody's very much aware that AI was part of that process. It has been accepted at a few small film festivals, and that's also been part of the kind of the presentational angle of it. And then what's your what? What will you have at the end? Who's your audience? Some people are still have strong reactions against anything that has anything to do with AI, so bear that in mind. You might get your haters if you use AI. Think about who your audience is, and whether this is a gimmick or a sustainable practice for you. So I'll leave it there. Thanks very much. Down.
Hello everyone, I'm Sasha Guserovich. Thanks to RTS East for the invitation to speak tonight, and thanks to you all for being here. I'm a specialist in AI for audio. I've spent now more than 20, almost 30 years working on AI. I can tell you it's a domain which evolves extremely fast. I've seen the rise of the neural networks before they were a thing. In terms of achievements which justify that I'm here tonight to speak to you, 9 years of my life I've worked for a Cambridge startup called Audio Analytic, where we were making an AI which is able to recognize sounds in general, so you can imagine a sort of sense of hearing for computers. And then after that, I was head of AI research at a company called Music Tribe, which makes audio equipment, where the mission there was to explore what we could do in terms of complex automation, because that's what AI is. It's automation which is able to do complicated human-looking stuff that we could apply to audio equipment, which was quite a blank slate at the time. Nowadays, I'm running a consultancy called UnderstandAI.today, so helping people to turn AI, the technology capability of AI, into something useful. And then in parallel to that, I'm also building a new startup which is about helping live musicians to sound good when they don't have access to an audio engineer, or generally something that simplifies all the mess that the live stage can be. So who in the room is afraid about electricity? Anybody? When we look at these nice chandeliers in this room, okay, electricity is a good thing, we can light places, we can, light Las Vegas or something. But then we can also do this kind of thing, which is an electric chair. And so I purposefully chose something which is a bit gruesome, because like when I show you the electric chair, your brain goes, okay, so when I tell you, oh, AI is replacing writers or is replacing scriptwriters, your brain goes, oh my God. Okay, so there is a lot in the debate about AI of this kind of level one thinking of, oh my God, this could be the end of humankind, this could be something quite serious. But actually, at the end of the day, it's a technology capability, it's not an application. Until you say what you're going to do with AI, you don't really know what you're talking about. And so I underlined the word we do with it because just as Rafaela pointed before, and also Sarah, the agency, the human agency is very important. It's always a human using a tool. Even when you write a prompt, the prompt doesn't write itself. AI doesn't install itself on your computer. We do something. There is always an input and an output, and we're always the operator of the AI. So I'm going to show you a few examples of what AI can do when it comes to audio processing. All right, so just to explain those different examples, the first one is a company called Audio Shake, who they are specialists in source separation. So, for example, they did what you saw in that football match. You can remove the background noise from a recording. So pretty much nobody's going to hate you if you remove the vuvuzela from the World Cup recordings. And then nobody's going to either mind if suddenly David Beckham speaks perfect German. So it's quite utilitarian, and it's actually very, very, very useful in production because things that you had to sit for hours, like removing every little element of vuvuzela from your recording and stuff, now a machine can do that for you. The second example was the Boots and Cats. So it's a voice transformation process, and it can lead to something quite interesting. So this one was a bit kind of creative in terms of suddenly you can use your voice as a music instrument and transform it into something that's fun. I've seen another company doing audio effects where you mimic the audio effects with your voice, and it actually maps it to the dragon or a dwarf or whatever you want to create. The fourth one was Resync, which is an application of a company called IK Multimedia. And that's where things kind of become a bit half and half. So it's very useful for music producers to, if they want to sell their track, for example, to Beyoncé, to say, okay, well, this is how it's going to sound if you were singing it. And so with that, you can try different voice textures and shape the mood of your track, of your song, and use the voice as sound design. As in, you're not limited by your own voice anymore. You can, morph it to different types of genres of texture, grain, and so on. Now it becomes a problem if that was used to impersonate people against their will. So identity impersonation would be a problem. But you see, that's where we need to kind of like be careful about what the technology can do both, but do we do the virtuous thing or the controversial one? And the last example is really, really interesting because it's Janaya Monáe, which is a virtual singer. So that made lots of press about, oh my God, AI now has got an AI singer has had a contract. I think it was $3 million to license her songs to one of the big music labels. But now the interesting thing is that actually the images are fake, the music and the singing have been done by the machine, but the lyrics have been written by a young lady who sits in the Midwest somewhere, who is not really a good singer, she doesn't have singing skills, let's say. And she doesn't have all the background that Beyoncé has, say. But with AI, she was able to wrap her lyrics into this very powerful song. I mean, when I was making this presentation, I was repeatedly listening to this song. Then the next day, I was like, it's quite catchy. And the lyrics themselves are very, very human because it's about how do I know what love is if my dad didn't tell me that because he was gone when I was a kid and so on. So something really, really human, really touching. So that's where we have to be careful about the level of agency and what's the proportion of human contribution versus proportion of what the tool has generated around what the human is doing. This is something which is extremely difficult to measure because, especially in art, there was this artist once who took a banana and piece of tape and taped it onto a wall into an art exhibition and was like, this is my creation. And so it's very, very difficult to measure the amount of agency which makes a work of art a work of art. Like in the Janaya Monáe example, is it a valid song or is it not a valid song because nobody sang it? So you have lots of famous singers up against that saying, well, she could have written a book about with her poems in the book instead of making it, a song sung by some artificial voice. But just to say that, yeah, this is not an easy thing to measure. At the end of the day, we remain the pilot of all these things. AI doesn't choose to publish its own tracks. AI doesn't come to your house and plug himself into the wall and start doing things. There is always a user, and that user always has an agenda of what they want to do with AI. I'm going to leave you with that tonight. Thank you.
Great, cool. So I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes this evening about a project we did at VineFX last year with this guy. And you'll all recognize, well, possibly both of them, but I think particularly one of those is a very famous actor who appears in this show Lazarus like this. And the goal was that he was going to appear for most of the show at his current age, but there were a handful of shots where he was going to appear somewhere between 10 and 25 years younger than he currently is. And so he performed in those sections, and then our job was to go in and make him look younger, and which is particularly challenging given that we do all recognise him and are very familiar with films from those ages that we were targeting, like Love Actually and About Time and all those kind of things that are in popular culture. So we started investigating, started looking at things. Of course, we had a look at the whole deep fake idea as one option, but a lot of problems with that. Primarily getting data for it, both the legality of that, getting enough data, getting it high enough quality, all big challenges. And even if we could get it to work, there's still the challenge of, well, what happens if your supervisor or the client comes back and says, yeah, that's great, but can we have it a little bit different? And with these models, often the answer is, well, no, not really. It just is how it is. So in the end, what we set out starting to do was building a CG version of the head modeled by an artist, then animated by an artist who had a little bit of help from a machine learning face tracker, but very much a hand-animated process, then lit by another artist and composited into the various shots by a whole team of artists. And we end up with something that looks a bit like this. So it looks great, but we all know CG faces, the kind of faces you see in video games, and that we've seen other shows try and do main characters full CG faces is notoriously hard to do and get right. I mean, it's often a lot of the subtleties that really sell or break it, and particularly for somebody who's such an iconic performer, we needed to make sure that those really came through. We're going along, the artists were doing a great job of it, but wrestling with these challenges. And it was at that point that I came across a piece of research out of Disney Research, where they had proposed this idea of, well, can we edit faces by using a different AI model to generate our data for us? So we can generate perfect data and we can generate a lot of it. So we were thinking earlier about this idea of latent space, how you can have concepts encoded into these latent spaces. So to take an example from language models, you could, for example, encode the word for king, and you could also encode the word for queen. And if you look at the difference between those and apply that same distance to, for example, the word father, you find you often end up actually somewhere very close to the word for mother. So there's kind of these semantic similarities in this latent space. And what the researchers proposed was, well, we have models that can turn random latents into very convincing faces, and we can learn what the difference between a young face and an old face is. So now we can generate endless faces at different ages, but that have the same lighting, the same expressions, the same identity, the same everything, just different ages. Okay, so great, we're done, right? We take Bill's face and we apply this difference and we're done. Well, it wasn't quite that simple, because these models are producing random faces. We don't know which of these latents represents Bill's face, if any. So what this research proposed and what we ended up building a version of was taking all of these faces that we can generate a vast number of them, and then train a much simpler model to go from A to B on that synthetic fake data, and then apply it to Bill's face on these. And what we found that there were some things that it was actually very good at, like it would edit face texture very well, but there were some things like the shape of the nose or the hair or the structure of the jaw that it just really couldn't do. But those are the things that the CG model did really well. So we have these two things that complement each other very well. And then it was, that's something that all goes off to the compositor, and they get these different passes, and they can work those back together and use them. For example, around the mouth, I think a lot of the mouths were often from the original plate. And then there was an area around it where you just need that subtle skin movement and stretching. Those came from the model often. And then the rest of the head was often CG. And as we went through this process, it did get better. And we found better ways to train it, and we could make the model bigger and train for longer and those kinds of things. And I think that one at the end was mostly machine learning. So we got one or two that were where the age difference was less, and there was less of a structural difference to the face, where we could actually do a bit more of it. But largely it was a hybrid between all of them. So that was earlier last year. Since then we've kept dipping our toes into various machine learning ideas that I'm happy to talk about later as we're discussing. So we can take very similar technology and apply it to automations, things like picking out color charts from a plate, kind of tedious, kind of boring. We can automate that a little bit. I know a lot of the compositors at Vine are now regularly using AI-assisted rotoscoping, not necessarily for finals, but just as a way of getting working. Gaussian splats, I'm sure lots of you have heard about that, and we've been trying that and having some real promise and success there, as well as some off-the-shelf models. We don't always train our own stuff for doing things like face replacing if you need to anonymize people. And we were really keen to keep exploring this idea of synthetic data for creating things to train on in a way that's entirely owned by us. There's no legal worries about it and no ethical worries on that front. So to summarize, we're excited about the possibilities that it can unlock as a small company. It's always at the moment coming with shortcomings and challenges that are causing at least as much work and headaches as they're solving. And even having seen some of those shortcomings, I think we still find it easy to jump to an expectation that it's going to work when we see one example that works. And suddenly we're like, great, let's do it for everything. But as soon as the rubber hits the road and you get real examples, it causes problems. And these can be very hard, particularly when the models are like black box models. We can't see how they're working inside necessarily. Then it's really hard to overcome that. So a lot of work there. And just a final thought from me that as I hear people talk about the changes that AI is bringing into our work, it reminds me a lot about how people talk about the difference between the very old school model making visual effects versus the more modern digital visual effects that we see. And that perhaps part of the reason there's so much love for that old stuff, the old model making and the very practical ways of doing it, was that it was expensive and it was time consuming. And so the people doing it, put a lot of time and effort and craft into it. I mean, there's real intent behind everything they do. And then when we see the modern ways that are cheaper and faster to do, then it becomes possible to do it without thought and without giving the artists the proper time that they need to solve problems. And so as we've touched on already, a new set of tools and we need to be careful as we consider it to not squash out all the time that it takes artists to develop things and to put personality and intent behind stuff just because we can make it quicker.
So we have one more panelist left, and it's virtual. So Adam, can you hear us? Excellent. Okay, you're on the screen. Can you see the audience?
I can't see anyone, so I'm imagining you're all there and looking fabulous.
There we go.
Here we are.
There we go. Hello. Goodness. Hello.
So Adam, take it away.
So I am, thank you, I am available for weddings and bar mitzvahs in case anyone's interested. So what do I do? I am the head of Creative Industries, Culture and AI for Hertfordshire County Council. And why that means something is that we are one of the most significant film clusters in the world. So we've got major studios. We're the home of Elstree Film Studios, which we own. That is 100 years old this year. That produced original Star Wars films, Indiana Jones. We created Labyrinth was made there, The Dark Crystal, The Crown. Bits of EastEnders is made there, Strictly Come Dancing. Hamlet was just done there. Across the road from us is Sky. That's where Wicked was made. Jurassic World, Masters of the Universe. We've got Warner Brothers just up the road, where the Little Boy Wizard stuff was made. Then we've got BBC Elstree, which is now Fairbanks Studios, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And then they asked me to build a museum for the studios for its 100th birthday, and when I stopped laughing, I said, well, look, how long can you look at Indiana Jones's hat for? Like, in all honesty, you're going to build this thing, and it's going to be terrible, and no one will come, and in about 3 years' time, there'll be an inquiry, and I'll end up in prison for spending sort of 3 million quid of government money on nonsense. So let's do something interesting, because actually what we have is a triple helix platform. We've got government, education, local authority, industry. So I can connect these things, and we've got these at a global scale. I've got some of the biggest production companies and studios in the world and my doorstep. And then, you know what? They all need planning permission. So I kind of got them by the balls at this point to do whatever I like in the nicest possible way. And then we have loads of data centers being built. So I was like, okay, cool. So I've got a defensible moat. I've got universities, loads of them, who are doing lots of very interesting work with technology. I then have a bunch of very, very large global brands and a heritage that goes 100 years. I've got a visitor destination in Harry Potter Studio Tour, which is the #1 visitor destination in England. But in Elstree, where there is a bigger collection of studios, there's nothing. And they want to build a museum. I thought, well, okay, let's build an immersive experience. And then I actually had to understand what that meant. So I did a bit of research, and we looked at it. We looked at what the problem with immersive experience, what visitor-based experiential activities are often IP-led. So you go to Shrek's Adventures by our good friends at DreamWorks on South Bank. You queue up for a while, you pay a load of money, you go once, you buy a mug or something for 20 quid, and you come out and you never go again. So we thought, well, we can do better than this because we have to, because we haven't got the sort of money that DreamWorks have or that Warner Brothers have for Harry Potter. And we looked at the technology, we looked at inclusivity as a benefit, not a hindrance. The reason I'm not here tonight is I'm physically disabled. Sometimes I just can't travel. It's not feasible for me to do that. And I thought my daughter, my middle daughter, is non-verbal autistic. And she loves Taylor Swift. I don't know why we failed her as parents, but she does. She loves Taylor Swift. But the fact is, Daddy's disabled. She would be completely overwhelmed by Wembley. I can't physically take her there without great difficulty. Why can't I bring it to her? Because the technology exists. And we have another problem, which is retail and high streets are falling apart. And we have another problem, which is AI is growing exponentially. Right now, this second, it's as bad as it's ever going to be. It is continuing to improve. And we've got another problem, which is job creation. And I need carpenters and builders and plumbers. No amount of AI is going to unblock your toilet. And we need to build housing that's affordable for people. And we need inclusivity, and we need the economy going, and all of these things. And we think, okay, let us be clever, because I've only got 3 million quid, and I don't want to go to prison, as I said before. So I need to do something useful with this money. And government, anyone here who works for government, and I apologize in advance, and I do, we're not very good at joining up dots. It's not our strong suit, or using money particularly well. But neither is education. So we're both quite bad at that, because we get given money. We don't generate it. And the private sector thinks we're all basically idiots. So we don't talk to each other very well. So we created this triple helix to be able to create a common lexicon, to then see how can we affect meaningful cultural change with a heritage destination in one of the most deprived areas in the south of the country, in Borehamwood, that will act as an engine of regeneration and a live testbed for new technologies, using film and television as a lure to get young people into a space where we can create an engine that will help them, using haptic technologies, understand careers across sectors. So not just creative industries, agri-tech, environmental and sustainability, business, construction. And at the same time, work with the tool, work with AI, not sit there like the music industry did in the 90s and pretend nothing was happening, and not sit there right now, like we're all doing, saying it's doomsday and it's the worst and everything's going to end. The truth is rarely pure and never simple. It's somewhere in the middle. I've had film producers come to me and say, we're doing everything in AI. It's all AI avatars. It's all, and I said, yeah, that's going to be terrible. That's going to be an awful film. We're not going to do that. And I've had other people say, we're not doing any technology at all. I was like, what, not lights? You're not going to use cameras then? Well, AI has been used in editing software for years. That's also a ludicrous position to take. So we find new ways by experimentation, then putting it in a live test bed, and then creating social value out of that. And then when I talk to the very large IP companies, they get excited because we're saying not only are we going to use ESG, but actually we're going to make it a commodity. We're going to monetize it in a way that normally Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, your single IP entertainment venue is empty. It's only busy on a Saturday and a Sunday and school holidays. But if we had this as a space for well-being, if we had this as a space for people with dementia to work with AI avatars and start capturing oral histories and support someone lost in a memory where they may not have someone to help them at that moment, if we have it for a space where a working parent can take a beat and experience beauty and art just for half an hour to give them a break, if we can have it as a space where young creatives can come in, not encumbered by the lack of finance, but actually be able to use the laboratories that we're building to create content, because the #1 watched television channel across all demographics is YouTube. That is not about to change. The BBC have just made a deal with YouTube. Netflix have just made a deal with YouTube because vertical dramas, because of content creation online is the way forward. But big studios don't know what to do with it, because these are big studios that are coming to me and going, we make Jurassic World and Avengers. How do we make 16:9 vertical dramas? Or we'll just chuck AI at it. I'm like, well, it will lack all authenticity. It will be terrible. You need the human in the loop in all of this, but you don't need the crew that made Avengers Doomsday in a 30,000-foot soundstage. Actually, we need to change this approach. And everyone's going, this is revolutionary and different. I've said, no, it's not. In Le Parisien, they used to print out weekly extracts of a Dumas novel. It's not new, episodic storytelling. It's fairly old. And I'm under a whole load of NDAs on this. But let's say there was a very famous soap opera that was made in Elstree that may have mentioned earlier, with a square that people like to visit, but they weren't allowed to because it was being filmed on. And let's say perhaps maybe I was in negotiation to build such a thing for them in the Elstree immersive experience, where participants could actively engage in the soap opera, but then the social value that comes of that. And let's say then this technology can adapt to a physical disability, someone with neurodiversity. It can change the light and the sound without having to make othering of an experience. It's built in. Anyone who's been to a theme park, there's a list of reasons why you can't experience something. Well, let's not do that, and let's open this up. AI helps enable this. It's not the single driver. AI didn't invent any of this. This was multiple people using it, but we are working with it, and then we're working with the ethics of it, because at points we are recreating people who aren't alive anymore. These are very sensitive conversations with the states, with unions that we're having at the moment to discuss how do we do that? How do we do it sensitively? How do we tell a story, use a voice, create a legacy, work in this space? It's incredibly exciting. It's super scary. But it also can do many, many things. We can build opportunities for a load of people. I have 1 minute left, so I'm going to tell you a joke now. No, I'm not going to tell you a joke in a minute. But what I am going to say is these conversations are fundamentally important. And it's really important to test and to push and to understand and challenge, but never to bury our heads in the sand. And we are creating a live test bed for this, going to an audience. And we are open to participating with any content creators who want to come to us, any filmmakers and storytellers who want to play in the sandbox. Please come to us. Please reach out. You can get my details from the organizers. We would be delighted to hear your stories and find a way to tell it in a new way for new audiences who are consuming content in new and differing ways. Thank you very much. I've been Adam Morley, and this is Saturday Night.
So thank you to all our panelists. Fascinating elements of film production there. We're diving in and out. There's lots on my mind. I guess the first question, I think is a useful question to first ask is, you mentioned level 1 thinking you thought about. A lot of people, the initial reaction is that AI is going to take my jobs, the robots are coming, what do I do about it? How do we get over that hump, that sort of level 1 thinking, that sort of visceral fear that, it may not happen now, but sometime in the future, I'm actually interfacing with technologies that are going to make me redundant or going to change my job in numerous ways. And I guess, if we're really honest, some of us share those fears as well. So how do we get over that hump? And then we can maybe explore some other elements. What are your thoughts on that? And do you have colleagues and teams that talk about these things? I know I do, and people sometimes bury their head in the sand, or they embrace, or they're somewhere in the middle.
Because I was the one mentioning level 1 thinking. So, this is not a new problem. When you had the wielding robots in car factories that also cut jobs. First of all, we need to look at history of how those things were tackled. Now, the thing which is new with the language models with AI is that suddenly it's not about wielding cars, it's about writing text. And it's about, oh my God, the knowledge might be somewhere else. But I think it's really early to claim and to know which jobs are going to be affected by this kind of thing. And there are studies, but again, they are quite discrete, which show that actually the time you take reworking what the AI writes or curating. So the way the lady behind Janaya Monet, I'm sorry, I don't even know her name because she's kind of hidden between this kind of persona. She goes to Suno, she writes prompt, but then she writes 100 songs before one of them is actually useful. So is that really going to lead to firing people? Or is it going to lead to a repurposing of how we use the tools? Now, one extra persona in that is, companies who pay your salary have an interest in paying less salaries and stuff. So that's also a thing where, corporations need to take their responsibilities on this, I think.
It's just an open question. Anyone can have a go, yeah.
I was just going to say, be the person who knows how to use the tools, I suppose, is just, get involved, get messy, and get to use it. Then you'll see how it's not going to be the answer to all your creativity and productivity problems. And then you'll begin to realize, you'll begin to have confidence about all the skills that you have as a human that AI doesn't have. You'll be able to make that demarcation more clearly and communicate that to potential employers, crews, whatever it is, in any environment. Be the person who knows how to work the AI tools. Workflows, I think, are one of the most challenging issues around all creative industries, is working out how this particular tool, and they're all slightly different, how they interface with traditional workflows, And if you can be somebody who comes along and provides, an ethical kind of, an effective and interesting kind of solution to one of those workflow processes, stages, then you'll be the person that will be employed. And you'll only know how to do that if you just get stuck in and use all the free ones that are available out there. So get stuck in, I think, would be my response.
Yeah, I also think that we need to know the tools, because something is going to change, so it's important to know the tool. Knowledge is power. Yes, big companies will tend to reduce people, to reduce the number of employees. It's their job, to earn more money. And maybe also in productions, there would be the need of less people to make a production. That's also true. But maybe we can do 2 productions instead of 1. So why not? So we can decrease the cost, decrease the people we need, we can increase the number of productions. So we have to learn to use this technology as well, as we can. It's very important. I think competence is very important, because nobody really talks about that. We have to learn them. We have to learn how to use these tools. Otherwise, we can't talk about ethics. Otherwise, we always talk just about accepting, embracing, or rejecting. It's not about accepting or rejecting. It's about using it properly. And it's a new kind of competence, and we all need that.
The prompt.
The prompt, yes, the prompt. We need to try to think in the right way. We need to use it the right way. I always say that usually these things, but it's linked. These things are, making, is the death. These kind of tools are the death of visible ignorance. So in the past, you could easily identify an ignorant because they didn't have a tool helping them to say something intelligent. Now with these tools, everyone can can sound intelligent. So we need to be critical, understand where is the real competence and where is not. That is the trick. So competence, using them properly needs, see where the competence is, where the ignorance are hidden.
Thank you. Adam, did you have anything else to add on that question? I don't think he's there. Peter?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Maybe it's...
Yeah.
There we go. Maybe thinking with my other hat on, I spend a lot of my time writing code, and it seems to me that where the software industry is now is probably a few years ahead of where creative industries are in terms of the impact that AI is having. And even 18 months ago, if somebody had said, in 18 months, these language models will be able to do this list of tasks, list sort of not trivial, but still basic, but not trivial tasks, I'd have said, no, probably not. We're looking like we're plateauing below that level. It will never overtake a human engineer. Now, I use it on a weekly basis, set something going, walk away for 15 minutes, come back, and it's built something that would have taken me a day to do. And I've still had to input into that, but my level of input is becoming at a higher and higher level of thinking. And it's still helpful to understand these systems, but it's had more of an impact than I think most of us in software would have guessed 18 months ago. And the creative industry could go either way still, couldn't it? It could plateau below human level in every case, but I suspect we'll keep coming up against problems. Oh, it can't do this, it can't do that, and the engineers at the big companies will put their hats on and think about it, and eventually we'll cross each of those boundaries, and and so we've got to adapt and change as well. The way that I write code looks very different to 18 months ago. It doesn't mean that I lost my job, it's just, it looks very different.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to ask one more question and we'll hand over to the audience. Just on that thread of career paths, jobs, the industries, you mentioned kind of like, touched on some team roles there, but what about like entry-level jobs? Do you feel that AI is a threat to those entry-level jobs? So whether it's, color grading or junior coder, cameras, it's just those kind of like entry-level jobs that graduates rely on to cut their teeth, to grow their skills, whereas AI is going to come in and take those. There's lots of debates about that and this sort of cognitive offloading. I think you mentioned about learning as well, and I think you mentioned it as well about AI, the danger is that it strips away that learning process and that kind of craft building that you spent 10 years to get to, that you can now shortcut in seconds. And it kind of, I said there's two sort of domain problems linked. Any thoughts on that at all? Like, voiceover is a really clear-cut example now. AI voiceovers and kind of, I'm using AI for all my grading and all these sorts of things. It's,
well, once you don't have any trainees or any staff to do your color grading and stuff, I mean, or no input to the industry anymore, you're going to have to do something about it.
Well, I think from a career point of view, it's difficult for the extreme, from entry level and for seniors, because companies want to save money. So they think that with AI, they can do the job that entry levels can do. And seniors cost a lot, so we can cut them and keep the middle. It's not fair, and it's not true. We have to, to keep an eye on it, because we have to give people the possibility to grow. Otherwise, there will not be skilled people anymore. The AI can give them the possibility to build their own thing, but there is a danger. We have to be very well aware of it. Yeah.
any other thoughts?
I don't really have anything to add to that.
Yeah.
It's it could potentially be an issue for entrants, but again, I would just say, make sure, you educate yourself around the tools and as always with any kind of production job, you always have to sort of make yourself useful, don't you? Kind of like demonstrate your value against, a large number of people wanting to get into that industry. And if you have that extra knowledge around AI, data entry, working with small language models or whatever it is, then you'll be the person that's hired.
Is AI coming into the curriculum at AIU in the film and TV degree?
I mean, I think, as it's always, it's been in, as Adam said, it's been in post-production software, editing software for a long time. So in that respect, it's there, and new kind of tools and functions pop up all the time, and we introduce students to how to use those potentially, although their learning curve's often quite far quicker than ours on that front. But I think with HE, we're still very much wrestling with how to deal with essays, AI misuse, misconduct cases in just essay writing at the moment. And a lot of the young, I have tried to bring in, I have brought in a few exercises in my screenwriting classes using AI, and you get a really mixed crowd with the students, this 18, 19-year-olds, some of them are really anti it. And they're like, why are we using AI in this class? This is, they can, you can't really argue against that. So the cases that you make around, environmental impact and ethics are there in the room. And so, it's something that I offer as an optional kind of point in the process of developing an idea rather than making it mandatory at this stage. But yeah, AI literacy, trying to encourage students to think about how to use it in a way that will benefit their progress and development, and whilst staying critical around its use, I think is a challenge.